Okay, let's get into this really quite unsettling idea. The power dynamics, the hierarchies we deal with every day at work, in the world.
Mm.
They don't just appear when we're adults, do they? It seems like the roots go way, way back.
It's fascinating, really. Because our very first experience of the world is, well, it's total dependence, isn't it?
Right. Helplessness.
Exactly. And think about an infant crying. It's pure need, but it's also, you could say it's the first negotiation of power.
A negotiation. How so?
Well, survival depends entirely on getting a response. Who gives, who takes, who has the power to soothe, to provide.
So it's more than just biology. It's like it sets a pattern. This tiny being, totally dependent, starts mapping things out.
On a really deep, visceral level, yes. Before words, before conscious thought, it's about who controls the resources, who meets the needs. It becomes a kind of blueprint.
A blueprint for authority later on.
Precisely. And if we look inward at how our minds are structured, the psychoanalytic idea is that this early dependency shapes our internal sense of authority. Even without language, the psyche is charting these dynamics. Control, submission, it's like an imprint.
So we're building these internal hierarchies.
Yeah.
Without even knowing it. That's quite something.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you think about that little voice inside, doesn't
Yeah.
it? The one tell you, do this, don't do that. The judge?
That internal judge, often called the super ego, yeah, it grows out of those first relationships, those first authority figures, usually parents or caregivers.
Like an internalized parent.
Exactly. Shaping our sense of right and wrong long before we grasp complex rules or social codes.
And this internal parent, the superego, it's pretty demanding, isn't it? Seems like it's never quite happy.
Oh, absolutely. It often holds us to incredibly high, sometimes impossible standards.
Yeah, that feeling of never quite being good enough.
Yeah.
Always falling short.
That's the superego at work. It creates an internal ranking system, Where do you stand? Are you worthy? Always measuring against some ideal.
It's relentless.
It can be, leading to this persistent sense of inadequacy, like you're always missing the mark.
Like carrying invisible ladders inside, constantly checking your rung. You even see it when kids play, don't you?
You do.
Little power struggles, leaders merging, followers.
And from a psychoanalytic viewpoint, that's not just random social stuff happening. It can be seen as expressions of really fundamental drives.
Drives.
Yeah, like the drive to connect, to create arrows, some call it, but also the drive towards aggression, towards breaking things down, thanatos.
So even playground games reflect these deep forces.
They can, yes. These primal energies finding an outlet.
Which then connects to morality itself. I mean,
Yeah.
morality is a hierarchy, right? A
Yeah.
ranking of actions, good at, better, worse.
Absolutely. Society sets up these rules, these norms, constantly reinforcing what's valued and what's condemned.
And some argue, Freud certainly did, that civilization itself is kind of built on tamping down those instinctual drives you mentioned.
Yes, that civilization requires the repression of instincts. Morality becomes a key tool in that process, managing our primal urges to maintain social order.
But repression, it doesn't just make things vanish. The energy has to go somewhere, doesn't it?
That's the crucial point. It gets channeled, transformed.
So how much of our civilized behavior is just a lid on something boiling underneath?
It's a provocative question. How much is performance? How much is deeply ingrained control? And these repressed desires, they don't just stay buried individually.
No.
They can shape the collective. The values a culture elevates, say honor or wealth or piety, often reflect what that culture collectively desires and fears, maybe unconsciously.
Okay, give me an example, like sexuality.
Sexuality is a perfect example. Look at the incredibly complex rules and hierarchy societies build around it. What's allowed, what's forbidden, what's shameful, what's celebrated.
Why so much regulation?
Well, if you see sexual energy as this powerful, potentially disruptive force that can dissolve boundaries,
Yeah.
then it naturally challenges established hierarchies. So societies regulate it intensely. Taboos, norms, laws.
But the energy doesn't just disappear.
No, it gets redirected. It might fuel ambition, political power, artistic creation, religious devotion. Paradoxically, regulating it can end up reinforcing other hierarchies.
Interesting. What about the other drive you mentioned, aggression? Thanatos.
Another powerful instinct. We try to manage that too, don't we? Through things like competitive sports or even warfare.
Which are themselves intensely hierarchical. Winners, losers, ranks.
Exactly. And the danger, the psychoanalytic perspective suggests, is that if that aggressive drive is suppressed without constructive outlets, it can easily turn downwards, towards those perceived as weaker, lower on the social ladder. entrenching those very hierarchies.
Okay, so just to sort of recap, we've got human nature as this battleground between instinct and civilization.
A constant tension, yes.
And hierarchies aren't just out there in society, they're also in here. Internal maps, shaped by dependency, judged by the superego, fueled by repressed stuff.
That's the core idea we're exploring, which leads to a really fundamental question for you, for anyone listening.
Which is,
if these patterns are so deeply woven into our internal world, how much control do we actually have? Are our thoughts, our choices, more shaped by these unconscious structures than we like to admit?
that's pretty unsettling.
Yeah.
The idea that we might be collaborators in our own limitation, our own subjugation.
And think again about civilization being built on repression. Is that purely external pressure, society telling us no? Or have we internalized that repression so deeply it feels like our own voice?
Which might explain. Well, think about revolutions. They aim to tear down the old power structures.
Right. Freedom, liberation.
But so often, don't they end up creating new ones? Sometimes even harsher ones.
History certainly seems to show that pattern. The French Revolution, the Russian Revolution. Why does that happen?
I don't know. It's...
Well, one perspective is that the psychological imprint of the old hierarchy, the oppressor's patterns, lingers within the oppressed.
So even when the external chains are gone.
The internal ones might remain. The ingrained habits of dominance and submission, the internalized authority structures, they can just reassert themselves in a new form.
So is real liberation just swapping one boss for another? The rebel becomes the dictator, the excluded group becomes the new gatekeeper? It feels pretty bleak.
It can seem that way, but it forces us to ask, why do we seem so attached to hierarchy anyway? Is it just oppression forced on us?
Or does it meet some need?
Or does it fulfill some deep psychological need?
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps, it's been argued, external hierarchy mirrors our internal psychic structure, that constant negotiation between instinct, the id, reality, the ego, and morality, the superego.
So it gives us a sense of place. Order, certainty.
Maybe. Even if it costs us something in terms of authenticity, forcing conformity, suppressing parts of ourselves.
It really pushes you to look inside, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Who's actually running the show in your own head?
Mm.
Is it your conscious self, or are unconscious drives pulling the strings? Or is it that internal critic, the superego, laying down the law?
And here's the paradox. We might feel most free when we're pursuing external goals, but maybe we're most constrained by those unseen internal hierarchies.
We think we're breaking free.
But maybe we're just rearranging the furniture inside the same room, trapped by our own ingrained patterns.
So every act of rebellion might just reinforce the system in some way. Every push for freedom could inadvertently recreate some form of subjugation.
It's a profoundly challenging thought, definitely uncomfortable. But maybe hierarchy isn't only a prison. Perhaps it's also the necessary stage, the container for that dynamic clash between Eros and Thanatos you mentioned, a space where life and death instincts grapple, potentially leading to growth, to change.
Like civilization is a burden, but also maybe a necessary framework.
Freud certainly saw it as both a source of suffering and our greatest achievement. It's complex.
So the big question remains hanging, doesn't it? Are we really in the driver's seat? Or are we just playing out roles written by forces we don't even recognize?
And if it's the latter, how on earth do you rewrite that internal script?
Yeah.
There are no simple formulas, no easy answers here. But maybe the starting point is just awareness. Trying to notice those internal dynamics.
Like the next time you feel yourself judging someone. Or rigidly applying a rule.
Yeah.
Or feeling that pull to climb the ladder.
Exactly. Pause for a second. Ask yourself, is this coming from a place of real, authentic awareness? Or am I just playing a part, running an old program dictated by these unconscious forces?
It's quite sobering, this idea that we're all tangled up in these systems, both the ones outside and the ones inside. We're creating them and being created by them. Oppressors and repressed, maybe even within ourselves. So as you go about your day, maybe just sit with that feeling for a moment, that discomfort. It might not feel good, but perhaps it's where some real insight begins, some possibility for change.
Or does it?